leading into the second part of our panel discussion on unconventional careers, what we're going to move now into is moving into more of those, what are those real passions? What are those real pursuits? Adam mentioned it before, like what really drives you to get up and get out of bed every morning? So we're really going to touch on that. So we've talked about the transition from uni into career and what drove that. What were those stepping stones? What were those challenges? What were those minefields, I guess, and how to navigate those? But now I really want to understand those passions that you've either developed at a very early stage, such as Matt and Katerina, or you've maybe found later in life. So we'll start off again with you, Adam. What are those points that you raised before, but what really inspires you? And when did you, organically find those and really manifest those?
It's a big question. It's very introspective. Nearly a therapy session now.
Yeah.
I think what I'll do is I'll just share the moment I decided to found The Iconic, because I think that's actually one of the times that those passions manifested into my conscious, and I did something about it.
Yeah.
So I moved to Denmark with the Boston Consulting Group just to work in the Nordics. Was really interested in doing that. Was there about 6 months and met a German venture capitalist who was investing a lot in e-commerce, and we got to know each other, and they said, look, we want to invest in Australia. Why don't you quit your job, move back to Australia? We'll give you the funding and you can start this e-commerce company we're talking about. And it was just not my path that I'd planned. Like I'd planned to be at BCG a couple of years. They were sponsoring an MBA. I wanted to do that next. You know, I'd sort of had this life path. But it stayed in my mind, and I kind of fixated on it for a while. And this VC was quite persistent, saying, "Come on, like take the offer, like take the capital, let's do this." And I was saying, "I'm not sure." And I have this very strong memory of wandering around the canals of Copenhagen, just fixated on this dilemma of like, what should I do with my life? Yeah. And two things kind of came to the front. One was I love building things, and I'd only tasted that in small ways previously. Like when I was at university, I started a sports club. I really enjoyed building that. I built a brand around this like beach kiosk that I worked in over summers. I really enjoyed doing that. Yeah. I was a knife salesman for a while. That's another whole story, but built like a sales team, kind of enjoyed doing that. Yeah. And so the idea of like walking away from working with clients and doing a lot of PowerPoint slides and instead building something real from the ground up was exciting. And it wasn't until it was presented in front of me that I realized just how exciting that was. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is I've always been really consumed by this idea of identity and how we form our own identity. And it's probably from my philosophy background. Mm-hmm. But like fashion is fun and superficial, but it's also quite substantive to how we present ourselves to the outside world. Yep. And I'm not from a fashion background. You could probably tell. I think Katerina is the most fashionable on the panel today. But I certainly was interested in how people explore their sense of identity through the, if you like, the interface that exists between them and the outside world. Sure. And so yeah, the idea of building a fashion e-commerce venture just brought those two ideas to the front. Right. And I was like, this is exciting to me. Feels like I should pursue it. I'm just going to go with it.
Okay. That's really interesting, because I think we could all share the fact that going out and pounding the pavement and getting capital is damn hard. And here you had money on the table, yet still needed to find another motivator to go for it. Yeah. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, I mean, this is 2011, so there was no real sort of VC scene in Australia back then. So I was lucky to just have been living in Europe and met the right investor. And having now raised money for Hatch the other way around, pounding the pavement, I appreciate having been in the position the first time with The Iconic. But yeah, no, it wasn't about the capital. It was actually about just changing what I was doing with my life and moving out of effectively the conventional path of consulting, blue chip MBA, into the unconventional path of building a brand new business and effectively a new industry back in Australia.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Matt?
So I think it's kind of almost coincidental that the same investor that Adam had was, ended up being an investor on the venture that I worked on building from an early stage. So I found myself probably in the canals of Amsterdam, actually working in banking in Holland.
Something for where we need to be to get this inspiration.
And look, I was working in this Dutch bank and, building a business in their principal investments unit. Great mandate, like 600 million euros of private equity and, working on building a new desk. It was great fun. Felt like my time was kind of up abroad, and I came home to Australia and I worked at EY for a while as their global industry analyst, covering that sector. was kind of bored, wanted to do something a lot more interesting, but I think what needed to happen in Australia, and as Adam said, it was that time period where there was enough venture capital, there were startup hubs that were emerging, co-working spaces like Stone and Chalk where we started, and I found myself at Fishburne as the co-working space going, right, what do I want to do now? And I took this pitch to Tyro, the payments company, about building a lending product with their payments thing, and they kind of looked at me like, cool story, who are you? And we're building it anyway and we're getting a banking license. And so I found myself at Stone and Chalk and I met the CEO there, I met one of the VCs, and I saw this company called SpotCap, which was listed in the tenant directory, and I met the managing director. And it's just funny how life works out a certain way, because I'd been looking at startups in Berlin when I was living in Europe. It was a bit early, and I ended up working for a Berlin headquartered startup in Sydney building the Australian operations. And it was like, third employee, grassroots experience of like pound the pavement. We've got a Series A, we've got a great MVP. Let's build this company in Australia. And 4 years of that, and then we ended up getting acquired by Zip. Often you just don't know how life turns out, but you've got to be willing to go on the journey and look for those inflection points where listen to what people are saying to you and how you're feeling about things, and then I guess get that into a tangible project or product and run with it.
Mm-hmm. And Katerina, obviously you're following a deep passion there.
Yeah, I am, but I think it sounds a lot, better than it is, because it's actually evolved for me a lot. And I do have this kind of belief that your 20s is kind of a defining decade, in so much as it gives you a time period where you're relatively, unencumbered to try heaps of things, both in terms of skill sets, but also is sort of exploring passions and seeing if actually, is it just because it makes you feel good and it makes everybody think you're, fabulous that you're interested in this, or actually does it sort of turn the light on for you? Certainly for me, I was all, very passionate about climate change and solving poverty, and that still is sort of underlying, but actually when I started my business, and I wasn't in the canals, but I was in canals in India, probably not quite smelling quite as nice as where you guys were. But I started to realize that in my business, it wasn't really actually about climate. It was about, getting lights to women. And then it was actually about, but we're employing women and these women need a job because otherwise their kids will never, be able to keep going to school, and that became such a more motivating factor that I needed to be able to pay my team no matter what, and all of those things, much more than I guess the lofty goals. So I think that only comes through trial and error, and using your 20s to let it be your defining decade and to chase a few rabbits and things like that is a great way. And also, and to one of your earlier questions, one of the best ways to do that, and I still have this as, throughout my career when I've employed people, having young people come to me through LinkedIn, through any way, finding me somehow and saying, I'm really into what you're doing. I may not have the skills, but I'll do whatever I need to be a part of it. Yeah. I'll employ them over a highly qualified person any day of the week.
Get us back to that go-getter attitude.
Yeah, and just so don't worry, if you find something or a business that you just think is bloody cool or they're really innovative, just find a way to meet those people and be in that scene. Yep. And then you'll quickly figure out if you want to stay there or not. I found for me that was the best way to kind of see if things gained momentum or not.
There's one thing I want to ask each of you, but I will pick it up from where you left, Katerina. How did you cross over, whether that be you're in a big machine or whether it be you're following your own pursuits, at some point in time you got to just take the plunge. How did you internalize that, digest that, and then get the courage to go, okay, I'm following it?
Well, I have had some defining moments. So the story I mentioned before, when I was about to found Pollinator Energy, I had done my master's thesis in India, living and working in slum communities, seeing how we could provide renewable energy to them. And I knew I wanted to actually solve this problem, not just research business models about how to do it. But it just was so foreign and seemed so hard. And I boarded a flight that night that left out of Delhi in the night. So as you know, flying out of a beautiful city, twinkling stars below me. And I'd said to my partner, I need a sign. Going back to London to start the consulting jobs, and India had the world's largest blackout literally underneath us, and all of northern India went black beneath us. And it was I feel very lucky to have had a moment that I was like, oh God, I think that is a sign. I needed something, because they're hard decisions when you're stretching from, your conventional thoughts to something that's new. But I do think times have changed now, as you mentioned. There are so many. It's almost conventional to be in VC and tech now. I feel like, I don't know if it's just because I work in that area, but that there are lots more, I guess, safety rails and other ways to start to edge into things now and put your toe in the water. And that's something I'd always say as well, like, put your toe in doesn't mean you have to jump in, it doesn't mean you can't step back and go, actually, no, I'll try something else next year. Don't feel like it's the end of the world, even when they're quite substantial life decisions that you're making.
So Adam, canals to getting the backing, to then rationalising it with your own purpose. How was it to make the leap?
It was great, and I think just reflecting on the same question you asked there as to like how do you know when to make the leap? I actually think maybe today the question we should be asking is how should you know when not to? Because it's so popular to. It's so popular to like go start a startup because that's what everyone's doing, and until you've done that, are you really doing anything? And so. The thing I would point to there, it's funny. I'm quite an analytical thinker, but I would point to instinct. And I think, in hindsight, what I did well that I would encourage others to do, both in founding the Iconic and also in founding Hatch, is I didn't force it. I just put myself in places, in positions, in conversations that I enjoyed. And I just would meet people and I'd learn things and I'd hear about things. And then at some point, a moment would come of like, wait, this feels like something I want to do. And that came not from my head, but from not even my heart, from my gut. Like it was an instinct thing of like, I think that's something I want to give a proper shot to. And so I think that's the moment you're looking for, as opposed to, oh God, I feel like I should be starting a startup. I'm just going to find the best way to do it like immediately. The other thing I would say for anyone, just I guess while we're on the topic, who's thinking about starting a startup, is the very first thing I would advise anyone to do, if you've got an idea, is to tell it to the 10 people in the world who know and love you most and really want you to succeed in life. And then check in a week later with what they've done. And if they've told 10 more people, so like 100 people now know, you might be onto something. Okay. If you ask them, hey, what have you done last week with my idea? And they said, oh yeah, that idea, what was it again? Yeah. Like just drop it straight away, Yep. That's the first thing you should do before making an actual leap.
Yeah, cool. Matt?
Look, I think just to Adam's point, you kind of, startups, and to yours as well, Katerina, startups have become a thing. And don't start a startup just for the hell of it. Like people are trying to actively solve problems, like you were saying, Katerina, on the climate change side. Like it's got to be a core interest. I think if you can actually pull yourself back a second and go, what am I interested in? What am I good at? What am I passionate about? And what's the vehicle for that? It might be a graduate job. It might be a startup, but it's the application of that is really going to take you through that right career phase that's right for you at that time. And that is going to change over time, but it's passion, purchase, and just passion and purpose and the application of that to what you want to do at that time in your life. And that's really the most important thing.